Hello, welcome to this week's episode of Anxiety Answers. And this week the question is it possible to solve anxiety without the use of medication? So this is the question I will be answering in this episode. Welcome. So what if I told you it's not possible to solve anxiety? What would you say to that, given that I'm an anxiety coach and that's how I make my living, solving anxiety for people? So I'm being a little bit cheeky here because basically anxiety is a normal bodily response to a threat or danger. So it's a perfectly normal bodily response. So we're never ever going to feel completely like calm, flat all the time because that's not normal. So basically what I'm saying is, when we're in a place where our anxiety is actually causing us issues in our day-to-day life, then absolutely it is possible to solve that and get you back down to a good place where you're in a stable place. I mean, it's normal to fluctuate up and down like this, but if we're getting to a point where we're just completely over aroused and we can't cope, then absolutely it's possible to solve that. And if you carry on listening, I'm going to tell you my 4-step approach that I've developed over many years of working with hundreds of clients with these very issues. Step number 1. So the first step when we want to solve anxiety is, first of all, we have to recognise the signs in our body and in our mind as to how anxiety presents for us. And we then have to make that decision once we've recognised it, that we want to do something about it. So that's the first step. And normally when people come to me, it's where they've recognised there's an issue for a little while. So they've been really aware of this stuff going on in both their head and their body. And they get to a point where they're just unable to cope with it anymore, or they don't want to cope with it anymore. And that's when they first come to me. So that is step 1. Step 1 is recognise. Andrea, I've got racing thoughts, I can't go to sleep at night, it's driving me bonkers, I can't shut my brain down. If I just want to go to the shops, I can't go to the shops without shaking, I can't get on the train without being absolutely petrified when I'm going to work, this type of thing. So the first thing that we actually do is we start to connect to the body, and from that point onwards, I never refer to anything that my client has as anxiety. I don't really think that's very helpful. So what we do is we actually connect to the body and we start to say, for each individual person, this is very different. How is this presenting for you? Do you feel fearful? Do you feel overwhelmed? Are you numb? Are you actually unable to feel anything? So you can actually hear there's lots of different presentations. And what this helps me to do, if I can really understand what's going on for my client in their mind and in their body, is it helps me to know which of the little tools in my little toolkit that I have, that where I help people, what tools to use with my client and where to sort of start from with them. So that's my second step, is connecting. And then once we've connected, in the third step, we then start to change. So we're starting to connect and understand what these feelings are in our body and in our mind and how they present individually for us. Once we've done that, we can then start to intervene in that process and to change that process. And this, again, is different for each person, really depends on what the presentation is. But generally speaking, if the person is presenting with like anxiety that's really fearful, so like this very fearful response of, very aroused state, generally speaking, that's because there's a part of the brain that's triggering this fear response inappropriately, and that will come in before any part of your conscious brain can interrupt and go, no, that's not appropriate, I'm safe. So what we start to do is we strengthen that conscious part of the brain to be able to interrupt that fearful cycle a lot earlier, and to then be able to say, no, it's okay, we don't need to trigger. And we do that through some mindfulness and meditation type processes, and also some processes using the body for different sort of body techniques to help that client to be able to come out of the head and into the body and interrupt that thought process. So that's with sort of over-arousal. And then the other opposite of that almost is where some people can actually come with numbness and detachment and being unable to connect to both themselves, their loved ones, the external environment. And that's where the body has sort of closed down, cut itself off, because it's a defense mechanism essentially to keep us safe, to keep us alive. So what we have to do there is we have to gently reconnect, and very, very gently, because if we go too quickly, then you know, the person can risk going back to this aroused state that I've just described. So we do this very gently I use different types of breath works, and again, a body type technique that will help the client to start to connect to their body gently and just start to recognize what those signs are for them. So that's the next stage, is actually changing what's going on in both the mind and the body, stage 3. And then the last step, so I've cheated a little here because we're going in a circle. So the last step is reflect. So we recognise the signs, we connect to the body to understand what's happening in the mind and the body, and to really sort of feel those individual signs for us. Then we change what's going on with some of my tools and techniques that I use, both of the mind and the body. And then once we've done that, we then go to reflect. So we're continuously in this circle. And if I just describe this a little bit in my own journey, before I started with this process or started to understand this and how to connect to my own body, I was having regular migraines and IBS. And when I say regular, like once every fortnight, probably one of those, or sometimes both. And since I've been doing this, I've not now had any IBS symptoms or migraines for over 2 years, and I'm not on any medication for either of those things. So I've managed to do that by continuously reflecting on and connecting to my body. So basically reflecting, how am I today? What's happening? What can I feel in my body? And I've started to recognise little signs of when I'm feeling overwhelmed before my body gets to the point of giving me IBS or giving me a migraine to make me stop. So that's the fourth stage, is reflect. And then we continually go around this cycle. So basically, once I've taught this to my clients, and I do this in very small groups, a 2-month program, really small groups, up to 6 people maximum. Once you've learned these techniques, then it's just there for life, like it is for me now. So you can just carry on and do these processes yourself, and you're able to then control your own levels of anxiety so that you don't get to overwhelmed place again.